In a Love is Blind season of firsts.
Just wait until the reunion.
She had the audacity to tell me we are Eskimo sisters.
Okay, wait, I just have this little...
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
When Love is Blind first hit Netflix in early 2020, it felt like a wild social experiment wrapped in romantic glitter. The idea was absurdly simple and impossibly complicated all at once. Strangers talk through walls, fall in love without ever seeing each other, and decide whether to get engaged based only on conversation. There were no roses, no island villas, no glittering studio audience, just the sound of two voices connecting through a glowing blue wall in the pods. The premise dared people to believe that emotional chemistry could eclipse physical attraction, and against every cynical instinct in the modern dating world, millions of us couldn't look away. Over the seasons, Love is Blind has evolved from a curious concept to a cultural phenomenon. Viewers have cried, cringed, and yelled at their screens as couples proposed, fell apart, or stood at the altar saying, "I do," or "I don't." The show has produced genuine marriages, memorable villains, and endless social media debates. Every city has given the series a slightly different flavor. Atlanta brought warmth and chaos, Chicago gave heartache, Seattle tested emotional depth, Houston was explosive, and Charlotte revealed just how fragile love built on isolation can be. But Season 9 feels different. It carries the weight of a franchise that knows its own influence and a cast that steps into the pods fully aware of the world watching. This time, the story unfolds in Denver, Colorado, a city where nature and ambition seem to meet in the middle. The crisp air, mountain views, and high-altitude lifestyle lend the show a new energy. Denver isn't the glossy chaos of Los Angeles or the genteel rhythm of the South, it's outdoorsy, independent, and quietly self-confident. That tone trickles down into the cast, 32 singles who have traded in dating apps for an emotional experiment that promises to expose every truth they've tried to hide. From the very first episode, there's a sense that these contestants have studied the earlier seasons. They know the pitfalls. They've seen what happens when the sparkle of the pods fades under fluorescent apartment lights. They've watched couples crash and burn after the honeymoon phase, and they've seen the rare ones, like Lauren and Cameron from Season 1, turn the experiment into real love. That awareness makes the Denver singles both more cautious and more self-aware. When they walk into the pods, they're carrying the ghost of every Love is Blind couple who came before them. The hosts, Nick and Vanessa Lachey, return once again with that mix of warmth and lightly teasing authority. They've become almost parental figures for the experiment, cheering the couples on, reminding them to trust their hearts, and occasionally asking the uncomfortable questions we all want answered. Vanessa, in particular, hints early in the season that something happens this time that's never happened before, a promise that hangs over every conversation like a spark waiting to catch. The pods themselves look familiar but sleeker. There's a subtle redesign that makes them feel slightly more open, the lighting a little softer, as if Netflix knows that half the world is watching in HD and wants to keep the aesthetic Instagram ready. But the essence is the same: 2 chairs, 2 voices, 1 wall. Here, in this strange capsule of artificial intimacy, the first bonds begin to form. Among the women, you can already sense the mix of hope and guardedness. There's Ollie, a 29-year-old nurse who's been burned by modern dating and says she's tired of men who text but never call. She's earnest, warm, and funny, her laugh carrying through the pods. Then there's Ashley, 35, a director of compliance who approaches the experiment like a strategic project. She's analytical but vulnerable underneath, a combination that draws attention fast. China, 39, is all charisma, sharp, magnetic, and confident that she knows what she wants. On the men's side, Michael, 41, works in medical sales and has the calm, measured energy of someone who's lived a few lifetimes in relationships already. And then there are younger guys like Ethan and Tomas, eager to prove that sincerity can still win hearts in a world of swipes. The early episodes always carry the same intoxicating rhythm, laughter through the walls, nervous confessions, and the dawning realization that words alone can make someone feel seen. When 2 people connect, it's immediate and electric. Conversations stretch into the night, tears fall even though they haven't met in person. In Denver's pods, the dialogue feels more introspective than in some earlier seasons, less about appearance or surface traits, more about family values, emotional maturity, and compatibility. Maybe that's a product of age. With many contestants in their 30s or early 40s, this cast seems ready to find something lasting. As the days pass, love triangles begin to take shape, the heartbeat of every Love is Blind season. One woman connects deeply with two men, another man finds himself torn between comfort and excitement. The show's genius lies in how it makes those invisible walls feel like magnifying glasses. With no physical distractions, every emotion becomes louder, sharper. We see it when a contestant hesitates before answering a question, or when they whisper, "I think I'm falling for you," through tears. Those moments are raw because they're unscripted, and because we've all been there, trying to decide whether vulnerability is worth the risk. Season 9 plays with that tension beautifully. There's a scene midway through the second episode when two contestants confess mutual feelings almost simultaneously, unaware that each is also forming another connection in a neighboring pod. The editing is masterful, cutting between laughter and doubt, between declarations of love and silent pauses. It's that editing rhythm that makes Love is Blind addictive. Even when nothing big happens, the emotional stakes feel enormous. Once the first proposals start rolling in, the pace quickens. Each engagement still carries the ritualistic sense of awe, voices trembling, someone sliding a ring across the floor, a tear-soaked yes. And then comes the reveal, the first time they actually see each other. That moment, no matter how many seasons we've watched, never loses its magic. Some run into each other's arms like they've been reunited after years apart, others freeze, trying to align the person in front of them with the voice they fell in love with. In Denver's season, those first meetings are particularly fascinating. The mountain backdrop and crisp air somehow make everything feel more cinematic, but what stands out most is authenticity. You can sense when attraction hits instantly, and when it doesn't. The cameras linger on expressions that betray shock or uncertainty, reminding viewers that, no matter how pure the emotional connection, physical chemistry still plays a role. When the newly engaged couples travel for their post-pod getaway, the tone shifts from emotional exploration to real-world adjustment. This is where Love is Blind traditionally tests its premise. In earlier seasons, the trips to Mexico or the Caribbean served as a sun-drenched honeymoon phase. Here, the Denver couples head to a scenic mountain resort, surrounded by nature and quiet, a deliberate contrast to past luxury escapes. The producers seem to want deeper conversations, less distraction. We see couples hiking, cooking together, or simply sitting by fire pits discussing fears. It's rawer, slower, and more emotionally revealing. Still, drama finds its way in. Small comments ignite big insecurities. The realization that others are in the same space, the same people they once dated blindly, adds tension. Old emotional triangles resurface. The audience feels the push and pull, we want these people to succeed, yet we can't look away from the cracks. That duality has always been the show's secret formula, rooting for love while bracing for heartbreak. By the time they return to Denver to live together, you can already tell which couples are solid and which are barely hanging on. The city becomes a quiet but powerful character in itself. The mountain views and cool evenings lend a sense of clarity. There's something grounding about seeing couples grocery shopping or walking dogs against that stunning backdrop. Unlike the humid chaos of Texas or the urban buzz of Seattle, Denver's vibe feels balanced, idealistic yet real. The producers use that to their advantage, capturing the contrast between the serenity of the city and the internal storms brewing within relationships. One particularly moving storyline centers around a pair who bonded over loss, both having gone through tough family experiences. Their conversations in the pods were heavy, emotional, full of mutual understanding. In the real world, however, they struggle with communication styles. It's a reminder that empathy in isolation doesn't always translate to daily life. Viewers online are already labeling them the heart couple of the season, imperfect but deeply relatable. Elsewhere, another couple quickly becomes the lightning rod of drama. Their chemistry is undeniable, but so is their volatility. The way they argue feels reminiscent of Season 4's most explosive duo, though here, it's tempered by self-awareness. They know they're being filmed, and sometimes you can see the calculation, moments when one partner glances at the camera mid-argument, as if wondering how this will play to the audience. That meta-awareness has crept into Love is Blind over time, and Season 9 doesn't shy away from it. Fans who've watched since the beginning will pick up on subtle nods to previous seasons, references to the Lauren Cameron fairy tale, the Micah Irina chaos, the Zach Bliss redemption arc. It's like a shared mythology that both contestants and viewers inhabit. This season acknowledges that history instead of pretending it doesn't exist. When one contestant jokes, "I just hope I'm not the next Jessica," everyone, including us at home, knows exactly what she means. Through these callbacks, Love is Blind Season 9 manages to feel self-aware without losing sincerity. The show still asks the same haunting question: can people truly love without sight? But the answer grows more nuanced with each passing season. We've learned that love might begin blind, but staying in love requires seeing every flaw, every difference, and choosing to accept them anyway. As the first half of the season builds toward its midpoint, tensions rise, alliances shift, and those words from Vanessa Lachey echo louder: something happens this season that's never happened before. The teaser keeps fans guessing: could it be a couple quitting mid-season? A cross-pod romance rekindled after the reveal? Or maybe a twist in the wedding episode that changes everything? Whatever it is, the Denver experiment feels like the most mature, emotionally layered chapter yet in the Love is Blind story. When the Denver couples return from their mountain retreat, the mood shifts almost instantly. The glow of the pods and the thrill of first love begin to fade, replaced by the quiet, sometimes awkward reality of everyday life. The experiment has moved from fantasy to functionality: bills, schedules, toothbrushes, and time management. This is where Love is Blind has always tested its theory: can the emotions built in isolation survive the practicalities of the real world? Each couple is given a shared apartment in the Denver area, beautifully staged but intentionally simple. The furniture is sleek, the lighting warm, but it's still just a blank canvas. What matters now isn't the decor, it's how the two people inside that space will build, or fail to build, their version of home. On the first morning, we see Ollie standing at the kitchen counter making coffee, her fiancé scrolling through his phone. It's an ordinary moment, but you can already sense the tension between routine and romance. She teases him for being glued to his emails. He jokes that she's already acting like a wife. The laugh they share is light, but beneath it there's something unspoken. Both are trying to figure out how to merge their independence with intimacy. Across town, Ashley and her partner are navigating a different kind of tension. Their connection in the pods was intellectual, built on deep conversations about ambition, family, and the future. But in person, that same intensity has turned into pressure. They argue, gently at first, about small things: how to fold towels, whose messier, whose work schedule is harder. What begins as flirtatious banter often turns into defensive sparring. The cameras capture the micro-expressions, the fleeting looks of frustration that hint at something larger simmering beneath the surface. China, meanwhile, has become a breakout personality for viewers. In the pods, her sharp humor made her stand out, but in shared life, that same boldness occasionally intimidates her partner. There's a scene where she tries to discuss finances, practical, necessary, and he deflects with jokes. Her patience wears thin. "I'm not trying to argue," she says softly, "I'm trying to build a life with you." It's one of those unscripted lines that echoes through the fandom, clipped and shared across social media. The middle of any Love is Blind season tends to blur reality with introspection. The participants are both living their relationships and performing them for the world. By season 9, that self-awareness is fully visible. Contestants know that every glance, every hesitation will be dissected online. And yet, despite that knowledge, genuine emotion keeps breaking through. When one couple shares their first real argument about trust, it's messy, raw, and unmistakably authentic. The woman walks out onto the balcony, tears streaming, whispering, "I don't want to be a reality TV stereotype." Her partner follows, wrapping his arms around her, promising that what they have is real, even if millions of people will soon have opinions about it. As days pass, family introductions begin, one of the most emotionally charged parts of the show. Meeting family always tests the purity of the pod-born connection. For some, it's affirming, for others, it's a collision of worlds. Ollie brings her fiancé home to meet her parents, who are skeptical but kind. Her mother, a retired teacher, asks pointed questions about commitment and career. Her father sits mostly silent, watching the man across the table as if measuring whether he could protect his daughter's heart. The tension is palpable, but when the fiancé shares a story about caring for his younger siblings after their mother's illness, the room softens. Ollie reaches for his hand under the table, a small gesture, but a sign that she's choosing empathy over fear. In contrast, Ashley's family dinner turns stormy. Her brother questions the entire premise of the show, saying, "You can't know someone through a wall." Her fiancé defends the process passionately, insisting that emotional connection matters more than physical attraction. The debate escalates until Ashley breaks down, reminding them that she's never felt more seen than she did in those pods. It's a raw, uncomfortable scene, but also a powerful reminder of what Love is Blind asks of its participants, to defend something intangible against the skepticism of the world. By the midpoint of the season, audiences start to pick favorites. Social media buzzes with theories about which couples will make it to the altar. Reddit threads dissect every interaction, every hesitation, every facial expression. The show's impact has always extended beyond the screen. It creates a temporary global village of hopeless romantics and professional cynics all debating whether love, in its purest form, can survive exposure to reality. Back in Denver, one of the quieter couples begins to emerge as a sleeper favorite. They're not flashy, not dramatic, but there's a sincerity in the way they navigate daily life. They cook dinner together, dance in the living room, laugh about their awkward first meeting. When conflict arises, as it always does, they handle it with patience rather than theatrics. It's refreshing in a season filled with emotional fireworks. Their storyline becomes a subtle counterpoint to the chaos elsewhere, proving that love doesn't always need to be loud to be real. Still, not all stories can end quietly. Another couple's relationship begins to unravel in spectacular fashion. What started as passionate chemistry turns into mistrust. He feels she's distant, she feels he's controlling. The arguments escalate until one night she packs a small bag and leaves their shared apartment to stay with a friend. When producers check in, her voice trembles, "I wanted love to be blind." But it's not. It sees everything. Moments like this remind viewers why the show resonates so deeply. It's not just the experiment, it's the mirror it holds up to real relationships, the way people project, fear, compromise, and sometimes crumble under expectations. At this point in the season, the couples who remain start wedding planning. The show's pacing slows deliberately, letting each participant face the looming decision, marriage or goodbye. Wedding dress fittings, suit shopping, emotional chats with friends, it's all part of the ritual that amplifies anticipation. The Denver backdrop again plays its role beautifully. The crisp fall weather, the golden leaves, the mountain skyline, everything feels cinematic, but there's a quiet melancholy too. The scenery becomes a metaphor for love's fragility, breathtaking but unpredictable. As the weddings draw closer, the producers intercut past season flashbacks, connecting these couples to their predecessors. Lauren and Cameron's forever love montage. Tiffany and Brett's emotional steadiness. Micah's tears. It's a reminder that Love is Blind isn't just a dating show, it's an evolving anthology of human vulnerability. Each new city adds another layer to the story of how people love, fear, and hope. When the couples gather for one final group event before the weddings, a kind of emotional checkpoint, everything comes to the surface. The atmosphere is both celebratory and charged. Some couples are glowing with quiet confidence. Others can barely meet each other's eyes. There's laughter, wine, nervous energy. Then, inevitably, confrontation. A former pod rival pulls one fiancé aside, accusing him of not being genuine. Another participant admits to lingering feelings for someone else. The party spirals into the kind of messy, unforgettable scene the franchise is known for, heartbreak filmed in real time. But amid the tears and raised voices, there's also a strange tenderness. These people have shared a singular experience that few can understand. They've exposed themselves emotionally, publicly, for the possibility of love. As night falls over Denver, Vanessa and Nick Lachey make a quiet appearance, their presence grounding the chaos. They remind everyone why they came here, not for fame, not for followers, but to find something real. Vanessa's voice trembles slightly when she says, "You can't control who sees your heart, but you can control how honestly you show it." In that moment, the tone shifts again. The party calms, conversations soften. One couple dances alone by the fire pit, whispering apologies. Another stands apart, realizing silently that they might not make it to the altar. The producers don't need to add music, the silence says enough. By the end of episode 9, only a handful of couples remain fully committed. The editing teases heartbreaks yet to come, but also the possibility of genuine love. Fans are left guessing which of these relationships will survive beyond the glitter and the cameras. As wedding week begins, Denver feels different. The air seems thinner, crisper, as if even the mountains are holding their breath. For the couples still standing, this is the moment when the experiment stops feeling like television and starts feeling like life. There are fittings, rehearsals, final arguments, quiet reconciliations, all happening under a ticking emotional clock. Every scene carries the weight of the question that defines the entire series: will love be enough when it's finally seen in full daylight? The apartments are emptier now. Half the participants have already left, their relationships collapsing under the strain of reality. Those who remain have learned to live with cameras as constant companions. When one bride-to-be tries on her dress, she glances at the lens not with nerves but with familiarity, as if sharing the moment with the invisible millions who've been watching her story unfold. Ollie sits in front of a mirror, her makeup artist working quietly as she stares at her reflection. There's excitement in her eyes, but also exhaustion. She whispers, "I can't believe this is actually happening." For a moment, she's not a contestant, she's just a woman about to marry someone she met in a way that defies logic. Her mother sits nearby, clutching tissues, already teary. The camera doesn't intrude, it lingers respectfully, letting silence say everything. Across town, her fiancé is pacing the floor of a hotel suite, adjusting his tie again and again. His best man jokes to lighten the mood, but the tension doesn't fade. "You know," he says finally, "I've dated women for years without ever feeling this nervous." His voice cracks a little. "And now I'm about to marry someone I met through a wall." Meanwhile, another couple's story takes a darker turn. After a late-night argument about trust, they haven't spoken since morning. She's dressed for the ceremony, but her eyes are distant. He's rehearsing vows he no longer sounds sure about. When producers ask if they're ready, he shrugs. "I thought love would be simpler than this." It's the kind of confession that hits like a whisper but lands like thunder. The weddings themselves are shot with the kind of cinematic tenderness that's become a Love is Blind signature. There's no grand music, no artificial suspense, just footsteps, heartbeats, and the soft murmur of guests who aren't sure what's about to happen. Each aisle walk feels like a test, not just of love but of courage. The first ceremony begins outdoors, framed by the Colorado landscape, pale skies, rolling hills, the scent of autumn in the air. Friends and family fill the seats, uncertain whether they're about to witness a beginning or an ending. When the bride appears, her fiancé's eyes well instantly. Whatever the outcome, this moment is real. Their vows are shaky but heartfelt. She speaks first, voice trembling, "I fell in love with your words before I ever saw your face. And when I finally saw you, everything made sense." He smiles, swallowing hard. When the officiant asks the question, the pause feels eternal. "Do you take?" The silence stretches. Then he exhales and says, "I do." Cheers erupt. The relief is overwhelming, not just for them, but for the audience that spent weeks hoping someone would prove the experiment still works. As they kiss, the camera pulls back slowly, capturing the mountains behind them, vast and still, like silent witnesses to something fragile but true. But of course, not every story ends that way. The next wedding is quieter, almost somber. Ashley walks down the aisle with perfect poise, her dress catching the afternoon light. Her fiancé looks at her with visible conflict, as though he's rehearsing heartbreak in real time. When she reaches him, they hold hands but their smiles don't quite meet. Her vows are beautiful, reflective, mature, filled with gratitude. His are short, hesitant. When the officiant turns to him and asks the question, he hesitates. The camera catches everything, her hopeful eyes, his trembling lips, the collective inhale from the crowd. "I can't," he says finally, his voice breaking. Gasps ripple through the guests. Ashley closes her eyes, a single tear escaping, but she doesn't collapse. She just nods, takes a small step back, and whispers, "Thank you for being honest." Then she turns and walks down the aisle alone, the music swelling just enough to carry the ache of the moment. It's one of the most haunting scenes of the entire series, devastating and dignified all at once. Later, during a confessional, she says quietly, "I didn't come here to be perfect. I came here to be brave." That line becomes one of the season's defining quotes, echoing across social media and fan discussions for weeks. Another couple's wedding teeters between joy and chaos. Their chemistry has always been electric, but their fights equally intense. On the morning of the ceremony, they argue about something trivial, a seating chart, a misunderstanding about a text. Friends intervene, urging them to calm down, but the tension lingers. When they finally stand at the altar, they look more like opponents than lovers. Yet, as they exchange vows, something softens. She starts crying halfway through hers, admitting that she's terrified but unwilling to give up. He takes her hand and says, "We've been through fire. I'm ready to build something from the ashes." It's raw, messy, and exactly why people keep watching this show, because real love isn't tidy. When they both say, "I do," the audience in the room erupts, but online, fans are divided. Some call it redemption, others call it delusion. That tension between love and doubt is the heartbeat of Love is Blind, the truth that love, even when it's real, doesn't guarantee peace. As the finale unfolds, Vanessa and Nick Lachey return for a reflective segment filmed weeks after the weddings. They sit with the couples, asking what they've learned. There's laughter, a few awkward silences, and one unexpected twist that lives up to Vanessa's early promise, something that's never happened before. Without spoiling the full reveal, it involves a couple who reconnected after walking away at the altar. For the first time in the show's history, two people who said no find their way back to each other months later, proving that love doesn't always follow the script. The reunion footage shows them sitting side by side, hands intertwined, smiling shyly as Vanessa asks, "So, are you together?" They nod. The studio erupts in cheers. It's a reminder that the experiment isn't just about proving a theory, it's about exploring the unpredictable nature of human connection. Sometimes love blooms in the pods, sometimes after heartbreak, sometimes when the cameras have stopped rolling. The reunion episode also provides closure for those who didn't make it. Ashley's grace in the face of rejection earns her universal admiration. She reflects on her journey, saying, "Maybe love isn't blind. Maybe it's just brave enough to see someone and choose them anyway." Her words feel like a thesis for the entire series, honest, wounded, and hopeful. By the time the final credits roll, Denver has etched its own identity into the Love is Blind legacy. The city's calm, introspective energy gave this season a maturity that earlier ones sometimes lacked. There were still dramatic fights and viral soundbites, but also moments of quiet truth, two people sitting in the dark, holding hands, trying to figure out if what they have can survive daylight. The experiment has always been both idealistic and cruel. It asks strangers to expose their souls on camera and promises them love as a reward. Sometimes it delivers, often it doesn't. But what keeps viewers coming back isn't the promise of a fairy tale, it's the reflection of their own hopes and heartbreaks, distilled into 12 episodes of courage and chaos. Season 9, more than any before it, feels like a mirror turned inward. The contestants aren't naive anymore, they know the odds, the scrutiny, the risk of public vulnerability. And yet, they step into the pods anyway, chasing something unseen but deeply felt. In that choice, to risk being seen for who they truly are, lies the heart of Love is Blind. When Love is Blind first appeared on Netflix back in early 2020, no one could have guessed that a social experiment about dating in isolation would grow into one of the most talked about reality series in the world. The premise sounded almost absurd: lock singles in pods where they can hear each other but never see one another, let them fall in love through conversation alone, and see if those emotional connections could survive the shock of finally meeting face to face. Yet the gamble paid off. Viewers became obsessed with the awkward pauses, the trembling voices behind the walls, and the quiet courage of people trying to connect without the armor of looks or filters. 5 years and 8 seasons later, the experiment has turned into a cultural phenomenon, inspiring memes, think pieces, and even a handful of real marriages. Season 9 arrives carrying the weight of that history. It lands at a time when audiences already know the mechanics of the pods, the chaos of the first reveal, and the heartbreak of wedding day rejections. The producers at Kinetic Content know this too, which is why they shifted the entire operation to Denver, Colorado, a city that feels at once grounded and unpredictable. The mountains, the crisp air, and the open skies create a backdrop that seems to invite sincerity. Denver gives this season a quieter, more reflective tone, co-host Vanessa Lachey told Netflix's Tudum. The experiment might be the same, but the energy is new, less glitzy, more introspective, the kind of setting where people talk about real things. Behind the scenes, the process starts months before the cameras roll. Producers put out casting calls across Colorado, Utah, and neighboring states, searching for singles who aren't just camera-ready but genuinely open to the idea of falling in love without sight. More than 10,000 applications come in, but only 32 people make it through interviews, psychological screenings, and compatibility tests. They're told almost nothing about what to expect. Phones are confiscated, schedules are tight, and once filming begins, their entire world shrinks to a soundstage filled with futuristic-looking pods separated by glowing walls. When the doors finally close and the first round of introductions begins, the familiar rhythm of Love is Blind clicks into place. Each man and woman rotates through a series of dates lasting about 15 minutes each, guided only by voices. Some conversations start awkwardly, small talk about pets, music, or weekend plans, but every season seems to produce that one instant spark, the kind of exchange that silences the background noise. Within hours, favorites emerge. In Denver, that early chemistry forms between Ali Lima, a 29-year-old nurse, and Nick Amato, a 28-year-old luxury watch dealer. Their voices carry a mix of nervous excitement and relief. She laughs easily, he listens carefully. Around them, other contestants are testing boundaries, telling stories about heartbreak, divorce, or the frustration of dating apps that make connection feel disposable. Here, stripped of appearance and social media, those confessions land heavier, truer. By the third day in the pods, the experiment begins to feel less like a show and more like a pressure cooker. Contestants sleep little, live on adrenaline and take-out coffee, and spend nearly 16 hours a day in conversation. Some cry, some journal obsessively, and others begin to lose track of whose voice belongs to whom. It's in that blur that real intimacy starts to form. In Season 9, producers notice something unusual: the overall tone is quieter, more emotionally grounded than in previous cities like Atlanta or Seattle. The Denver singles, many in their 30s, talk about careers, mortgages, and children rather than clout or Instagram followers. It feels grown, Nick Lachey remarks during a behind-the-scenes segment. The first proposals arrive on schedule, a few after only 4 days, others after a week. The moment never loses its surreal power. One contestant kneels on the floor of his pod, holding a ring box toward the glowing wall as his unseen partner sobs on the other side. The wall slides open, and for the first time they see each other. Sometimes the chemistry translates perfectly, sometimes you can feel the air shift, that awkward hesitation that reminds everyone this is still reality television. Out of the 32 participants, 5 couples leave the pods engaged, a standard ratio for the franchise but one that hides hundreds of untold stories, people who came close but not quite, friendships that formed instead of romance, heartbreaks that never make the final cut. Once engaged, the couples travel to a romantic resort outside Denver for the getaway phase. The contrast is jarring, from fluorescent pods to mountain sunlight, from conversations through walls to long embraces. For viewers, this part is the honeymoon phase, the portion filled with laughter, champagne, and scenic drone shots. But it's also where cracks start to show. One couple struggles with physical attraction, another fights about communication styles. For the audience, these imperfections are the lifeblood of the series, the reminder that the experiment may be built on idealism but survives on human messiness. Love is Blind has always thrived on that tension between hope and chaos. Each new season invites comparisons, the sweetness of Lauren and Cameron from Season 1, the volatility of Season 4's Marshall and Jackie, the cautionary tales from later seasons where couples crumble under the pressure of public attention. By Season 9, the participants have watched those outcomes. They arrive both inspired and wary, aware that fame and scrutiny will follow them long after the cameras stop. Some admit during confessionals that they're terrified of becoming memes, others say they just want the fairy tale. The duality gives this season its texture, a cast both self-aware and sincerely hopeful. At the mountain resort, the days blend together, breakfast interviews, afternoon activities, late-night confessions. Producers hover discreetly, keeping just enough distance to let real emotion breathe. One morning, as snow begins to fall outside, Ollie and Nick share a quiet moment on a balcony, wrapped in blankets. "This feels realer than I thought it would," she says softly. He nods. "Yeah, but the real test hasn't started yet." It's an offhand comment that turns prophetic. Because the next phase, moving in together back in Denver, is where fantasy collides with reality. Apartments are fully furnished by the production team, each couple given identical layouts so no one can claim unfair advantage. The cameras follow as they unpack boxes, merge lives, and start to notice the little things that never come up in the pods, how someone leaves dishes in the sink, how they handle stress after a long day, how they fight. The experiment stops being theoretical, it becomes domestic. In one apartment, laughter fills the kitchen as a couple attempts to cook together for the first time. In another, tension simmers as a disagreement about finances escalates. Denver's skyline glows through the windows, beautiful and indifferent. The show's editors know how to balance these rhythms, a tender moment here, a confrontation there, building toward the inevitable question of whether love forged in isolation can survive the noise of everyday life. Compared with earlier seasons, the Denver edition feels less performative. Maybe it's the altitude, maybe it's the maturity of the cast, but there's a slower pace, a willingness to sit with silence. Viewers notice. Online discussions describe Season 9 as the most emotionally intelligent season yet. Even the hosts pick up on it. Vanessa Lachey calls it a season about honesty, teasing that one storyline will deliver a twist that's never happened before. Fans begin speculating wildly, secret past relationships. A runaway groom? An unexpected reconciliation? The show thrives on that anticipation. Still, beneath all the production polish and social media frenzy, the heart of Love is Blind remains remarkably earnest. It's a show that asks people to do something ancient, to fall in love through words, inside a setting that feels futuristic. Season 9 leans into that paradox. Its first half, the pods and the Denver move-in, becomes a meditation on vulnerability in the digital age. The singles talk not only about love but about loneliness, burnout, and the exhaustion of constant self-presentation. In the pods, they can finally drop the performance. It's the first time in years I've felt really heard, one participant confides. That sentiment, repeated across seasons, is what keeps the franchise alive. As the days progress, alliances form between the cast members. They compare notes, gossip gently, and comfort each other after difficult conversations. The communal aspect, contestants bonding with their rivals, gives the show its warmth. During filming in Denver, production insiders describe a sense of camaraderie rarely seen in earlier installments. Perhaps it's the shared isolation, or maybe the mountain air just makes people a little kinder. Whatever the reason, the energy behind the scenes feels less like competition and more like collective curiosity about whether the experiment still works. By the end of the first month of shooting, the couples have settled into their temporary apartments. Wedding planning begins, and with it, the familiar anxiety. Some parents are skeptical, others supportive. The Denver families bring a distinctly Midwestern frankness to their reactions, lots of raised eyebrows, followed by cautious hugs. One father sums it up perfectly: "I just hope this isn't one of those shows where they embarrass you on the internet." His daughter laughs nervously, promising him it's different. Outside, winter fades into early spring. The production schedule tightens, filming days stretch past midnight, and the emotional temperature rises. For viewers, these are the episodes that define a season, when small doubts grow into make-or-break decisions. But for the people inside the experiment, it's a blur of interviews, fittings, and arguments about everything from pet allergies to where they'll live after the show. The Denver skyline becomes both romantic backdrop and silent witness to dozens of tiny personal crises. And that's where Love is Blind, Season 9 truly begins to reveal its personality. It's not just a repetition of a formula, it's a reflection of how the experiment evolves with time. The singles of 2025 aren't naive. They've seen the memes, the controversies, the public breakups from previous seasons. Yet they still step into the pods because, at its core, the idea of being loved for who you are, unseen, unfiltered, remains intoxicating. That belief, fragile and persistent, is the pulse that drives this season forward. By the time the Denver experiment moves into its middle stretch, the sheen of novelty has worn off. The couples who emerged from the pods are now sharing real spaces, kitchens, bathrooms, grocery lists, and that's where the experiment's premise begins to collide with the unglamorous texture of daily life. The Denver apartments that once looked like dream homes in promotional shots start to feel smaller when two people with different morning routines try to coexist. It's in these quiet domestic scenes that the audience learns who these couples really are. Ollie and Nick, the pair who seemed so aligned in the pods, discover that they process conflict in completely opposite ways. She wants to talk everything out immediately, while he needs silence to think. The first argument, over something trivial like misplaced keys, becomes a microcosm of that difference. Cameras catch her pacing, whispering under her breath, while he stares out the window toward the skyline. In confessionals recorded later that night, both admit they overreacted but also confess to a flicker of fear, the dawning realization that love built on conversation alone might not be enough to bridge habits formed over decades. Across town, another couple, Jamie and Priya, navigate a different set of pressures. Their chemistry was electric from the start, but now that they're outside the pods, cultural expectations and family scrutiny begin to intrude. Priya's parents, immigrants from India, express skepticism about a marriage formed through a reality show. Jamie, an outdoor gear salesman with a laid-back demeanor, tries to reassure her that he'll win them over, but his jokes sometimes miss the mark. During a tense dinner scene filmed in a downtown restaurant, Priya's father asks bluntly, "Do you even know her favorite food?" Jamie hesitates for a beat too long. The silence that follows is excruciating and instantly meme-worthy. These mid-season episodes are where Love is Blind earns its emotional credibility. Gone are the idealized speeches of the pods, what remains are moments of hesitation, awkward laughter, and genuine vulnerability. The Denver season leans into those textures rather than cutting around them. The editing slows down, giving arguments and reconciliation space to breathe. The result feels almost cinematic, natural light filtering through apartment blinds, handheld cameras capturing the tremor in someone's voice. Viewers begin to pick sides, debating online who's ready for marriage and who's just chasing screen time. For the cast, that outside noise is invisible. They have no phones, no social media, just the production crew and each other. It's a strangely insulating experience. Several contestants later describe it as living in a bubble within a bubble. In that isolation, feelings intensify. One night, during a group dinner filmed in the foothills outside the city, tensions finally erupt. A stray comment about someone's pod boyfriend being more compatible than their current fiancé triggers a chain reaction of confessions and tears. The producers don't intervene, they simply let the chaos unfold, knowing that rawness is what gives the series its bite. The next morning, Denver wakes to a dusting of snow, and the mood in the apartments feels fragile, almost hungover. Still, amid the cracks, moments of authenticity shine through. Ollie and Nick reconcile in the kitchen over burnt pancakes. Priya and Jamie visit a meditation studio together and share a rare quiet scene without dialogue, just two people breathing in sync. It's small but disarmingly intimate, the kind of unscripted tenderness that keeps the audience invested. The show's strength has always been its refusal to turn relationships into caricatures. Even when editing condenses timelines, the emotions ring true because they're messy. Halfway through the season, the couples meet each other's friends. It's a crucial step that often decides whether engagements survive. Denver's social circles are tight-knit, and everyone seems to know someone who knows someone. Gossip spreads quickly. One scene shows a friend warning, "Remember, once the cameras stop, it's just you two. No producers, no lights." That reminder hangs heavy. The experiment's artificial structure, designed to strip away distractions, paradoxically creates its own kind of unreality. When that scaffolding falls away, some relationships collapse with it. As wedding planning intensifies, so does self-doubt. Contestants attend fittings, tastings, and counseling sessions with relationship coaches. The show's signature voiceovers return. In just 2 weeks, these couples will stand before their friends and family to answer the question, is love truly blind? It's a line the audience has heard for 9 seasons, but it still lands. The Denver cast members watch themselves in mirrors, trying on dresses and suits, and you can see them wrestling with the enormity of that question. Behind the cameras, production logistics are relentless. Every couple's timeline must align so weddings can be filmed across consecutive days. Crews coordinate florists, venues, and family arrivals like clockwork. Yet amid the precision, unpredictability seeps in. A snowstorm delays one shoot, a family member refuses to appear on camera, a ring goes missing hours before the ceremony. For viewers, these hiccups become invisible. For the people living them, they're the moments when nerves fray and authenticity surfaces. By episode 9, a pattern emerges. Those who communicate survive. The experiment may start with the absence of sight, but it ends up being about the presence of listening. Couples who can translate their pod conversations into real-world problem-solving begin to thrive, while others implode under expectation. One breakup happens quietly, off-camera, and is later recounted through teary confessionals. Another explodes in public during a group outing, complete with slammed doors and a producer's hurried intervention. It's messy, human, riveting. The Denver backdrop amplifies everything. Where earlier seasons were defined by tropical getaways or urban chaos, this one feels grounded in elemental contrasts, snow and sunlight, silence and confession. A drone shot of the Rockies at dusk becomes symbolic shorthand for what the show is chasing, clarity after confusion. The editing team knows it, using that visual motif repeatedly as the season builds toward its finale. In interviews released after filming, Nick Lachey described Season 9 as the most emotionally mature chapter of Love is Blind. Watching the middle episodes, that claim feels justified. The participants speak more candidly about mental health, communication therapy, and boundaries. There's less emphasis on spectacle and more on introspection. Even the soundtrack reflects that shift, acoustic guitar replacing pop anthems, long silences replacing reaction cuts. It's as if the franchise, now in its 5th year, has grown up alongside its audience. Yet maturity doesn't mean predictability. Episode 10 drops a twist that reframes everything. One contestant reveals a hidden prior connection to another's friend outside the show. It's not scandalous in the tabloid sense, but it punctures the illusion of a sealed experiment. Suddenly, trust wavers, and the remaining couples are forced to confront how much of their reality is truly blind. The fallout is subtle but devastating. One engagement breaks under the strain, another strengthens in defiance. The producers, to their credit, resist sensationalizing it. Instead, the narrative lingers on aftermath, two people sitting on opposite ends of a couch, the space between them filled with unspoken hurt. By the time the final stretch approaches, the Denver cast looks exhausted but strangely serene. The chaos of earlier weeks has given way to quiet acceptance. Each person seems to understand that whatever happens at the altar, the experience has already changed them. That transformation, more than the weddings themselves, is what Love is Blind continues to sell, the promise that vulnerability, even when it fails, is worth the risk. The final week in Denver arrives like the slow tightening of a string. What began as a social experiment about connection without sight has now become a countdown to a day of public reckoning. The couples who made it through arguments, doubts, and sleepless nights find themselves in a whirl of fittings, family arrivals, and rehearsal dinners that feel both real and surreal. For most, this is the first time they've had to confront the ritual weight of marriage, the music cues, the vows, the guests. The cameras are everywhere, but by now, they've faded into the background noise of nerves and adrenaline. The production team works like a small army, transforming rustic Denver venues into dreamlike spaces. One is a restored barn framed by fairy lights, another a modern glass hall overlooking the mountains. Each setup looks like it belongs on a Pinterest board, yet the atmosphere behind the scenes is raw and unfiltered. In small rooms off-camera, brides rehearse their vows, hands trembling. Grooms pace hallways, whispering half-memorized lines to themselves. Someone cries quietly in the corner while a producer offers tissues. The fairy tale is being built in real time, but everyone knows it could collapse in an instant. The first wedding day begins with nervous laughter and the gentle panic of preparation. Ollie wakes up early, staring at the Denver skyline through her hotel window. Her hairdresser tries to lighten the mood with jokes, but the air feels charged. "I keep thinking about that first day in the pods," she says softly to the camera. "It felt like we were the only two people in the world. Now it feels like everyone's watching." The irony doesn't escape her. Love that began in darkness now unfolds under the harshest possible light. Across town, Nick stands in a rented tuxedo, rehearsing his vows in front of a mirror. His best man teases him about the cameras. "You're about to say, 'I do' on Netflix, bro, millions of people are gonna see that." Nick just laughs nervously. "Yeah, no pressure." He glances at his reflection one more time, adjusts his tie, and whispers, "Let's see if love really is blind." When the ceremony starts, the audience can feel the collective heartbeat of every season that came before. The walk down the aisle, the music, the hushed anticipation, it's ritual now, mythic in its familiarity. Ollie appears, glowing but tense. Nick's expression shifts from wonder to something unreadable, a flash of doubt that seasoned viewers have learned to spot instantly. The vows are beautiful, sincere, trembling with the weight of the experiment. And then comes the question. The officiant's voice cuts through the silence. "Do you take this person to be your lawfully wedded spouse?" Nick hesitates. It's only a second, maybe less, but it stretches into eternity. Ollie's smile falters. Then he says it, "I do." Relief floods the room, the guests erupt in applause, and for a moment, it feels like a victory for the entire concept of the show. But later, during the reception, the tension lingers in subtle glances, the kind of unscripted uncertainty that keeps fans arguing long after the episode ends. The second wedding follows a different trajectory. Priya and Jamie's day begins with cautious optimism but unravels quietly as the hours pass. They exchange gifts, share laughter, and for a fleeting moment, seem at peace. But as the ceremony nears, Priya withdraws. Her parents sit stiffly in the front row, their expressions unreadable. When the officiant reaches her vow, she pauses. "I care for you deeply," she says, voice shaking, "but I'm not ready to say, I do, today." The words fall like snow, soft but irreversible. Jamie nods, fighting tears, and replies, "Then I'm glad you were honest." It's heartbreak rendered with grace, the kind of moment that reminds audiences why this experiment still matters. Love doesn't always survive, but truth does. As the final weddings unfold, Denver becomes a character in itself, the crisp mountain air, the sunlight cutting through clouds, the sense of closure and renewal. Couples walk out of ceremonies hand in hand or alone, framed against the wide horizon. Some viewers celebrate, others mourn, but everyone feels the weight of what they've witnessed. 9 seasons in, Love is Blind has evolved beyond reality TV spectacle into something closer to social anthropology, a mirror reflecting the way modern people chase connection in a world that constantly interrupts it. After the weddings, production moves to the reunion phase. A few weeks later, the cast returns to a studio set built in downtown Denver, reunited under hot lights and a low hum of anticipation. The Lachey's, polished and empathetic, open with the familiar question, "Are love and honesty still enough?" The couples answer one by one. Ollie and Nick, now visibly more relaxed, say they're taking things day by day. The crowd cheers, half relieved, half skeptical. Priya, sitting beside a supportive Jamie, admits that walking away was painful but right. The audience applauds her courage. Then come the surprises. A couple that viewers thought had split reveal they're giving it another try. Another, who seemed inseparable, confesses they broke up off camera. The honesty feels unfiltered, even messy, and that's precisely why it resonates. After 9 seasons, Love is Blind still thrives on the unplanned, the moments that defy the editing script. Viewers watch not for perfection but for recognition, the awkwardness, the doubt, the hope that someone, somewhere, might really get it right. The reunion ends with a montage, laughter, tears, Denver sunsets, confetti falling like slow snow. Vanessa sums it up best in her closing line, "Maybe love isn't blind forever, but sometimes you have to close your eyes to really see." It's sentimental, maybe even a little corny, but it lands. Because after hours of vulnerability, heartbreak, and imperfect honesty, the audience believes it again, that maybe, just maybe, love is worth the experiment. When the credits roll, social media explodes. Fans dissect every glance, every half-smile, every unanswered question. Who's still together? Who faked it? Who deserves better? The conversation becomes its own parallel show, fueled by speculation and empathy in equal measure. Within hours, clips from the weddings dominate TikTok. Within days, Denver cafes are hosting watch parties for the finale. The city that served as a backdrop becomes a cultural reference point, the Denver season, shorthand for emotional maturity and mountain air honesty. For the participants, life after the experiment is strange. Some return to their old jobs, navigating sudden fame with mixed feelings. Others embrace influencer life, launching podcasts or sponsorships. A few disappear entirely, craving anonymity again. The production team maintains distance but checks in periodically, mindful of the emotional aftershocks that reality TV can leave behind. In post-season interviews, several cast members described the experience as therapeutic, even if it didn't end in marriage. One says, "You learn things about yourself you didn't even know you were hiding." Outside the Netflix bubble, critics begin writing think pieces about what Season 9 says about modern intimacy. Some call it the franchise's most authentic season, others accuse it of romanticizing emotional exposure. Both are right. Love is Blind has always been an experiment in contradictions, private emotions made public, sincerity produced for entertainment. But in Denver, those contradictions feel gentler, more human. The cast doesn't seem to be chasing fame, they're chasing understanding. The result is a season that feels less like spectacle and more like a social study in vulnerability. By the end of the run, one thing becomes clear: the experiment works not because everyone finds love, but because everyone finds a mirror. The pods may be silent chambers of conversation, but what they really hold is reflection, of fear, hope, loneliness, and the eternal human craving to be seen for who we are beneath the noise. That's why people keep signing up. That's why millions keep watching. Season 9 closes that circle beautifully, not with perfect endings, but with imperfect truths. And as the lights fade on the reunion set, the Denver skyline glowing behind glass, there's a sense that the story isn't really ending. Rumors already swirl about Season 10, whispers of a new city, a new twist, maybe even returning contestants. But for now, the experiment rests, suspended in that quiet space between cynicism and faith, where the question still lingers unanswered: is love really blind? When Love is Blind, Season 9 finally dropped on Netflix, it felt less like another entry in a long-running reality franchise and more like an event. The Denver skyline, which had loomed in teasers for months, became a kind of visual promise, a clean horizon after 8 seasons of chaos. The day of release, the Netflix homepage lit up with the now familiar key art, glowing pods, blurred faces, and the tagline, "The experiment returns." Within hours, hashtags flooded social media, hashtag Love is Blind Denver, hashtag Team Alien Nick, hashtag Priya was right. Millions pressed play. What followed wasn't just binge-watching, it was communal participation. Group chats across continents filled with live reactions. People texted friends at midnight, asking, "Have you reached episode 6 yet?" It had that old-school, water-cooler energy that streaming rarely produces anymore, the sense that everyone was watching together, dissecting every hesitation, every "I do" or "I can't." Denver had become more than a backdrop, it was a mood, a shorthand for emotional honesty and second chances. Critics responded quickly. The Guardian called Season 9 the quiet masterpiece of a franchise that has outlived its own cynics. Variety praised its pacing and emotional clarity. Even skeptics who had long dismissed Love is Blind as dating show fluff admitted that something about the Denver experiment felt different. It wasn't the gimmick, the pods were the same, but the people. These were adults with jobs, mortgages, histories, and heartbreaks that didn't feel manufactured. Their vulnerability was less performative, more reflective. One reviewer noted, "It's the first season where silence speaks louder than the sound bites." Social media, meanwhile, turned the cast into overnight folk heroes. Ali's nervous laugh became a meme for anxious optimism. Nick's pause at the altar spawned endless reaction gifs captioned, "When you overthink a text." Priya's refusal to say, "I do," inspired think pieces about agency and self-respect. Within a week, hashtag Love is Blind Denver had over 1 billion TikTok views. Fans recorded themselves debating relationships like philosophers over coffee. You could walk into a cafe in Chicago or Seoul and overhear someone saying, "Honestly, Priya did the right thing." The experiment had transcended geography, it had become a shared language of vulnerability. Netflix, ever the data-driven observer, released numbers confirming what fans already felt: Season 9 had broken franchise records. Within the first 10 days, it topped charts in 43 countries and held the #1 spot globally for 2 consecutive weeks. That kind of reach turned the cast into cultural ambassadors of modern intimacy. Late-night hosts invited them for interviews, and podcasts dedicated entire episodes to analyzing their communication styles. Even therapists weighed in, using clips from the season to discuss emotional regulation and conflict resolution. The line between entertainment and education blurred, and somehow it worked. Behind the scenes, producers at Kinetic Content were stunned. After years of fine-tuning, they had found the formula's sweet spot: authenticity without chaos. The decision to film in Denver, they later explained, wasn't random. The city's rhythm, slower, more grounded than previous locations, shaped how participants behaved. People lingered over conversations, they weren't rushing to make viral drama. The mountain air, the sense of space, gave the season its emotional breath. One executive joked, "Maybe altitude really does make the heart grow fonder." As the buzz continued, fans began revisiting earlier seasons to compare emotional arcs. Forums filled with timelines, character analyses, and predictions for Season 10. Patterns emerged. Every few seasons, the experiment reinvented itself. Atlanta had been naive, Chicago dramatic, Seattle analytical, Houston chaotic. Denver, critics agreed, was introspective, a mirror season, one that turned the lens inward rather than outward. Viewers called it therapy television, a phrase that would have sounded mocking a few years earlier but now carried affection. Yet with adoration came scrutiny. Some questioned whether the show's premise, love without sight, still held up in an era of radical transparency. Was it possible, after 9 seasons of global exposure, to truly enter the pods without preconception? Could emotional purity survive in a world where everyone knew the cameras were rolling? Season 9 didn't answer those questions so much as complicate them. It acknowledged the meta-awareness. Contestants joked about memes and edit cuts, but leaned into honesty anyway. That paradox, critics argued, was what made it feel modern. The reunion episode, streamed live a week after the finale, broke Netflix's interactive viewing record. Hundreds of thousands tuned in simultaneously to send hearts, tears, and emoji reactions in real time. When the hosts asked Ollie and Nick whether they were still together, a hush fell across digital chat rooms. Nick smiled awkwardly and said, "We're figuring it out." It was the kind of answer that once might have frustrated fans but now felt refreshing. Life, after all, rarely gives clean finales. In Denver's local press, the season became a point of civic pride. Tourists began visiting the restaurants and mountain trails featured on the show. A cafe where one couple filmed a date started selling "Is Love Really Blind?" lattes. The mayor jokingly thanked Netflix for the free tourism campaign. The idea that a global conversation about vulnerability could sprout from Colorado gave the series an unexpected cultural afterglow. Meanwhile, the internet never slept. Twitter threads turned into miniature essays on empathy. Reddit debates lasted weeks. One fan wrote, "Watching these people try to love each other without filters makes me want to be kinder on dating apps." Another replied, "That's the real experiment." For a show often accused of voyeurism, sparking genuine self-reflection among viewers was no small feat in academic circles. Communication scholars began citing Love is Blind in papers about mediated intimacy. They analyzed how the show's structure, isolating participants from external validation, replicated certain aspects of therapy or confessional practice. Season 9, they argued, marked a maturation of the format, a demonstration that vulnerability could be televised without cruelty. Even cynics admitted that the editing this time felt compassionate, avoiding the cheap humiliation that had marred some earlier reality trends. For the cast, fame proved both exhilarating and disorienting. Ollie and Nick's wedding became one of the most replayed moments on Netflix's platform that year. They received thousands of messages from strangers, some supportive, others invasive. Priya turned her heartbreak into empowerment, launching a podcast called Seeing Clearly about boundaries and self-discovery. Within months, she had sponsorship deals and a loyal fan base that saw her as the voice of modern independence. Jamie, who had been edited as comic relief, found unexpected resonance too. His self-deprecating humor made him a favorite guest on talk shows discussing vulnerability from a male perspective. By summer, the ripple effect reached beyond entertainment. Dating coaches referenced the season in workshops. Relationship apps introduced blind chat modes inspired by the pods. Even wedding planners reported couples requesting decor like the Denver season, simple, honest, mountain vibe. The experiment had jumped from screens into everyday culture, transforming how people talked about connection. Netflix capitalized on the momentum swiftly but cautiously. Rather than oversaturate, the company teased Season 10 with a minimalist trailer, just the pods and darkness, a single voice whispering, "Can love see itself?" Fans dissected the line as if it were philosophy. Speculation about the next city, rumors of Boston, Toronto, or even London, fueled online discourse for months. But underneath the marketing, executives acknowledged that Season 9 would be hard to top. It had managed to combine the emotional sincerity of the first season with the self-awareness of a mature franchise. It proved that after years of parody and skepticism, Love is Blind could still make people feel something real. As the months passed, the Denver cast quietly moved on. Some relationships endured privately, others faded without public statements. Yet the audience, now trained to search for updates, continued following every hint on Instagram and podcasts. Each post became evidence in the ongoing narrative of whether Love could truly survive exposure. That sustained curiosity, the blending of reality and continuity, is what makes Love is Blind unique in the crowded field of dating shows. It doesn't end when the season ends, it lingers like a half-remembered conversation. Looking back, Season 9 stands as both culmination and turning point. It reaffirmed the show's central thesis, that emotional connection precedes appearance, while acknowledging its fragility. It showed that people can still surprise each other, even when the format is familiar. And it reminded viewers that vulnerability, though risky, remains irresistible. In the end, the Denver season wasn't about proving that love is blind, it was about proving that love is brave. The closing image that stays with everyone isn't a wedding or a breakup but a quiet montage from the final episode, contestants walking separately through Denver's streets at dusk, their reflections merging with city lights in the glass windows. A voiceover whispers the experiment's eternal question, can you love someone you've never seen? And then fades to black. It's less an answer than an invitation, a soft echo that carries into every viewer's living room. Weeks later, people are still talking about it. In offices, classrooms, and late-night text threads, strangers dissect the same themes that fuel the show: honesty, fear, hope. Somewhere, perhaps, another casting call is already open, and thousands of hopeful singles are filling out forms, convinced that they might be the next to find connection in the dark. The cycle continues, not because it's flawless, but because it reflects something endlessly human. Season may 9th be over, but its question endures, looping in our collective consciousness every time we swipe right, every time we send a late-night message, every time we wonder if someone could love us for what they can't yet see. In the quiet after the credits, when the screens dim and the noise of the world hums back in, Love is Blind, Season 9 lingers like the afterglow of a long conversation you didn't want to end. It's not about who stayed together or who walked away, it's about the fragile courage it takes to speak into the dark and hope someone's listening. The Denver experiment reminded us that love isn't a flash of perfection caught on camera, it's the trembling voice behind a curtain, the pause before a promise, the heartbeat that can't hide behind filters. For all its lights and edits, the show gave something quietly sacred back to its audience, the belief that connection, however messy or fleeting, is still worth trying for. Maybe love isn't blind, not really. Maybe it just closes its eyes long enough to remember what it feels like to see someone for who they truly are. And as the last shot fades to black, we're left not with answers, but with an echo, a whisper carried from the pods to the world outside: do you still believe? When Netflix first announced the return of its groundbreaking social experiment, Love is Blind, Season 9, the internet held its breath. After nearly a decade of viral proposals, teary confessions, and unforgettable heartbreaks, the franchise had reached that rare point where it no longer needed to justify itself. The premise was simple and unchanged: people meet, date, and sometimes fall in love without ever seeing each other. But Season 9 promised something different, something quieter and deeper. Set against the crisp skyline of Denver, Colorado, it was framed not just as another search for love but as a study in emotional honesty. The show's creators, Kinetic Content and Netflix Reality, made it clear from the start that this season would push the boundaries of vulnerability rather than spectacle. The first scenes of Season 9 feel familiar yet new. The pods, those glowing chambers of conversation that have become cultural icons, return, but the camera lingers longer on silence this time. There's less emphasis on confessionals, more on pauses, laughter, and the nervous fidgeting that accompanies raw connection. The production is cinematic, the lighting more natural, and Denver's calm, grounded energy subtly shifts the emotional tone. The voice of Nick and Vanessa Lachey, the franchise's ever-present hosts, floats in like an invocation. Once again, we ask, can love really be blind? What unfolds in the pods feels more intimate than previous seasons. The cast, carefully selected from across Colorado and nearby states, includes teachers, engineers, artists, and medical professionals. These aren't reality TV archetypes chasing fame, they're people in their late 20s to late 30s genuinely tired of surface-level dating. In the pods, they talk about grief, religion, childhood trauma, and the loneliness of modern life. The editing allows these conversations to breathe. One woman admits that she hasn't been on a real date in years because she's terrified of rejection. One man confesses that he's never said "I love you" out loud. The walls between them are thin, yet somehow the emotional distance feels infinite until it isn't. Over the first 5 episodes, love stories form like constellations. Ollie, a 32-year-old marketing manager, bonds with Nick, a software developer who writes poetry in his spare time. Their connection starts awkwardly but blossoms into long, laughter-filled conversations about music and family. Across the pods, Priya, a school counselor, finds herself torn between 2 men, Jamie, a firefighter with a gentle heart, and Cole, an entrepreneur whose confidence masks deep insecurity. The triangle becomes one of the season's emotional anchors. By episode 4, choices must be made, proposals accepted, and the walls that once protected anonymity come down. The reveal moment, when the couples finally meet face to face, remains one of the most thrilling in reality television. Every season, that first glance carries the full weight of human hope and fear. In Denver, the reactions are less exaggerated but more affecting. Ollie bursts into tears at the sight of Nick. She whispers, "You're exactly who I imagined." Priya, on the other hand, freezes for a heartbeat before smiling tightly at Jamie, her eyes flicking with uncertainty that attentive viewers will remember later. The experiment moves quickly from fantasy to logistics, flights to Mexico, shared hotel rooms, first arguments about toothpaste and phone habits. The post-pod phase in season 9 is edited with an unusual tenderness. Instead of amplifying drama, the show allows quiet moments to speak. We see Ollie and Nick sitting by a resort pool, talking about vulnerability rather than jealousy. Priya and Jamie explore what it means to communicate love when expectations don't align. For once, the camera doesn't cut away when silence falls, it lingers, letting viewers feel the discomfort and truth. It's this authenticity that critics later cite as the reason season 9 stands apart. After Mexico, the experiment returns to Denver for the cohabitation phase. The city's crisp autumn light and mountain backdrop give the season a cinematic warmth. The couples move into sleek apartments provided by Netflix, complete with cameras hidden in corners like modern confessionals. Real life intrudes, jobs, friends, commutes. The pressure to merge 2 worlds, one forged in darkness and one exposed to daylight, becomes the real test. Ollie struggles with Nick's introversion. Nick worries that Ollie's social energy masks fear of intimacy. Priya begins to realize that while Jamie is kind, their communication styles clash. What makes this stage riveting is how ordinary it feels. Gone are the forced dinner parties and staged conflicts of earlier seasons. Instead, viewers watch dishes pile up, awkward silences stretch, and genuine affection flicker amid fatigue. One scene, already iconic among fans, shows Priya sitting alone on the balcony after a fight, whispering to the camera, "It's not that I don't love him, I just don't know if love is enough." That single sentence encapsulates the emotional maturity of the Denver season, the willingness to confront doubt without villainy. Midway through the season, the producers introduce a new twist, a weekend retreat in the Rockies where all the engaged couples reunite.